You're here because you want to get straight to the point, right? Get the vital info without all the noise. We get it.
Mm.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into something you've probably heard about, something really uh, shaking up how we think about health. GLP-1.
That's right.
We've gone through the latest research, the studies, everything to pull out the really crucial stuff about this hormone and what it means.
And it's pretty remarkable when you think about the sheer scale of the problems GLP-1 actually addresses.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the WHO numbers from 2023. Almost 2 billion adults overweight, 650 million actually obese. It's staggering.
Wow.
And then the International Diabetes Federation, same year, saying over 500 million adults living with diabetes globally.
500 million.
Yeah. And, the tragic part is how these link up. The IDF's 2024 figures suggest over 4 million deaths every year tied to these conditions.
4 million deaths.
See, it's not just a small issue. It's a massive global health crisis that, frankly, needs new thinking.
Absolutely. And it feels like the standard advice, eat less, move more, take the usual meds, it helps. But it's often not quite enough for the long haul, is it?
Exactly. There was a study just this year, 2024, in the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology. Really stark. It found only about, 1 in 5 people with type 2 diabetes actually managed to keep their blood sugar in the healthy range long term with those methods.
Only 20%. That's pretty sobering.
It is. And that's really where GLP-1 comes in, offering a genuinely different approach.
Okay, so let's break it down then. In simple terms, what is GLP-1? What's all the buzz about?
Right. So GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It's part of a group of hormones called incretins.
Incretins, okay.
Your gut, primarily, it makes it when you eat, particularly carbs and fats. Think of it like a signal your gut sends out after a meal.
A post-meal signal.
Yeah, telling your body how to handle the incoming energy, its main jobs. Regulating blood sugar, glucose metabolism, and, crucially, appetite.
Okay, so an alert system after eating. Now, this idea of gut hormones having such a big impact, that's not something we've known forever, is it? I remember reading something about, taking glucose by mouth versus IV.
You're spot on. That's the whole incretin effect discovery back in the 80s.
Right.
Researchers noticed, that taking glucose orally triggered a much bigger insulin response than the same amount given intravenously, which clearly pointed to hormones from the gut amplifying that insulin signal, and GLP-1 is a major one.
So boost the insulin.
Mm-hmm. And technically, it's a small protein, 30 amino acids, gets activated in the gut. But here's the kicker, and this is fascinating.
Yeah.
This really powerful hormone, it only lasts about 1 or 2 minutes in its active form.
1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, an enzyme called DPP4 breaks it down super quickly. But in that tiny window, its effects are, profound.
Wow. Okay, so short-lived but powerful. How does it actually do all that stuff then? What's the mechanism?
It all comes down to the GLP-1 receptor. Think of it like a docking station, GLP-1R.
Okay, a receptor?
These receptors are on lots of different cells. Pancreatic beta cells, the insulin makers, neurons in the brain, stomach cells.
All over the place.
Pretty much. When GLP-1 docks onto this receptor, it flicks an internal switch inside the cell. Technically, it increases something called cyclic AMP.
Right.
And that tells the cell, okay, do your job. And the number of jobs is kind of amazing. A 2023 study found over 20 different physiological roles.
Over 20. Okay, let's focus on the blood sugar part first. It sounds like GLP-1 is a real lifeline for diabetes management. How does that work?
So the main thing is it boosts insulin secretion. Remember the incretin effect.
Yeah.
When your blood sugar goes up after eating, GLP-1 hits those beta cell receptors and says, release more insulin.
Makes sense.
But here's the really clever bit. It's glucose dependent. Meaning it only really ramps up insulin release when glucose is high. So the risk of hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar, it's much, much lower compared to older drugs.
Ah, that's smart. A built-in safety mechanism.
Exactly. And studies show it's significant. We're talking maybe 50–70% boost in insulin secretion in healthy folks, and still a solid 30–50% increase in people with type 2 diabetes.
That glucose-dependent thing really is brilliant. So more insulin when needed. What else? How else does it help with blood sugar?
Okay, second big thing. It suppresses glucagon.
Glucagon. That's the one that raises blood sugar.
Precisely. It tells the liver to make more glucose. In type 2 diabetes, glucagon levels are often too high, especially when fasting. GLP-1 dials that back.
So less glucose production from the liver?
Studies show maybe a 20–30% drop in glucagon levels, leading to like a 15–20% improvement in fasting glucose for diabetic patients.
Okay, so less glucose out from the liver, more insulin in when sugar is high. That sounds like a powerful combo.
It is.
But I've also heard it affects like digestion speed, how food moves through you.
You got it. It slows gastric emptying,
Okay.
basically how fast food leaves your stomach. By slowing that down, it delays glucose absorption.
So no sudden sugar rush.
Exactly. It prevents those really sharp spikes after meals. Studies suggest it slows emptying by maybe 25–40%, cutting post-meal glucose by 10–15% in type 2 diabetes.
And I guess that contributes to feeling full too.
Absolutely. That slower digestion is a key part of why people feel fuller longer, which, links directly to appetite control.
Right. It all connects. Okay, and one more thing on the sugar front. Does it help the body use the insulin it does make more effectively? Insulin sensitivity.
Yes, it improves insulin sensitivity, makes your cells better at taking up and using glucose. This is especially good for people with obesity who often have insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big meta-analysis, 2023, looked at 15 trials, found about a 20% average improvement in insulin sensitivity with these GLP-1 therapies.
And why is that?
The thinking is it's partly due to reducing inflammation and oxidative stress, both of which can interfere with how insulin works.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory. But what about in practice? Are there actual drugs that do this?
Oh, absolutely. That's where the GLP-1 receptor agonists, the GLP-1RAs, come in.
RAs, right?
Medications like liraglutide, semaglutide, they're designed to mimic our natural GLP-1, but engineered to last much longer in the body. They resist that DPP-4 enzyme breakdown.
So stick around longer.
Way longer. And the results, pretty stunning. A 2024 study in the New England Journal of Medicine's semaglutide lowered HbA1c, that long-term sugar marker, by 1.5 to 2%.
Yeah.
Compare that to metformin, maybe 0.5 to 1%.
That's a big difference.
Huge. And get this, in that same study, for people with early-stage diabetes, around 60% actually achieved remission. Remission, gone. It's a total game changer.
Wow, okay, remission of diabetes.
Yeah.
That's profound. So clear impact on blood sugar. But the other massive buzz is weight loss, a breakthrough for obesity management. Why?
Yeah, the appetite control aspect is truly transformative. I mean, obesity is complex, right?
Right.
But a big piece is often appetite getting out of whack, feeling too hungry, not feeling full, intense cravings. GLP-1 hits those issues directly, working in both the brain and the gut.
Okay, how does it work in the brain? That sounds fascinating.
It can actually cross the blood-brain barrier.
Well,
Yeah, and it binds to those same GLP-1 receptors in the hypothalamus. That's like the brain's control center for hunger and energy balance.
okay.
Activating those receptors, it dials down hunger, dials up satiety, that feeling of fullness. Brain imaging studies, fMRI scans, show it reduces activity in craving centers by maybe 30%, and people report feeling about 20% less hungry.
So it's literally changing the hunger signals in the brain.
Seems like it, but it also affects like the desire for certain foods, right? Making junk food less appealing.
Yeah, I heard that too.
It seems to interact with the brain's reward system, that
Wow.
hedonic drive to eat, the craving for pleasure foods, usually high-calorie stuff. GLP-1 seems to dampen that down. One study found it reduced activity in the nucleus accumbens, a key reward area, by about 25%.
So chips and cakes just don't seem as good.
Kind of, yeah.
Less appealing.
Which helps break that cycle.
So it's not just feeling physically full, it's also reducing the mental pull. That feels really important for long-term change.
It does.
And we mentioned the slower digestion earlier. How does that fit into the appetite piece again?
Well, that delayed gastric emptying definitely makes you feel full for longer after you eat, less urge to snack soon after.
Right.
But GLP-1 also triggers the release of other satiety hormones in the gut, like peptide YY or PYY.
Okay, so it calls in backup.
You could say that. And studies show that GLP-1 plus PYY working together can cut calorie intake by maybe 15–20% in overweight individuals. That leads to real sustained weight loss.
And we have seen some pretty dramatic results clinically, haven't we? Especially with semaglutide.
Oh, absolutely. Semaglutide at the higher dose for weight loss, branded Wegovy. FDA approved in 2021. The results are unprecedented.
Like what?
A big trial published 2024 in The Lancet. People lost, on average, 15–20% of their body weight over 68 weeks.
15 to 20%.
Yeah. So a 200-pound person, that's 30 to 40 pounds lost. Compare that to maybe 2–3% with placebo.
That's incredible. And is that kind of weight loss actually making a difference health-wise?
Definitely. A 2023 study linked that level of weight loss to a 20% reduction in major cardiovascular events. heart attacks, strokes.
20% risk reduction. Wow.
It's not just cosmetic, it's serious health improvement.
So it's that double whammy then. Eating less because you're not as hungry and maybe burning fat more efficiently.
Exactly that. There's evidence, a 2024 study showing these drugs increase fat oxidation, burning stored fat by around 25%.
Okay.
So yeah, less intake, more efficient fat burning, a powerful combination for weight loss.
This is just, it's so impressive for both diabetes and obesity. But I'm starting to hear hints it might do even more, like broader health benefits. Is that real?
Yes, the research is definitely pushing beyond just sugar and weight. We're seeing really promising signs for things like heart health, brain health, even inflammation control.
Okay.
It really shows how connected everything is in the body, doesn't it? How one hormone can touch so many systems.
Let's talk about the heart then. Cardiovascular disease, biggest killer globally, right? How does GLP-1 help there?
Well, it has these cardioprotective effects. It seems to lower the risk of heart attacks, strokes,
Oh.
partly by improving the risk factors we know about, lower blood pressure, better cholesterol numbers, less inflammation. A big analysis, 12 trials looked at, found about a 14% lower risk of major heart events in type 2 diabetes patients on these drugs.
14%, that's significant.
It is, and it seemed linked to things like a 5-point drop in systolic blood pressure, maybe a 10% drop in LDL, the bad cholesterol.
So is it just an indirect benefit from the weight loss and better blood sugar, or is there something more direct happening?
Good question. There's growing evidence it does have direct effects on the heart itself.
Really?
Yeah, lab studies, one in 2023, showed activating GLP-1 receptors right on heart cells reduced stress and cell death, actually improved function in heart failure models.
Wow.
Which is why researchers are now testing these drugs in people with heart disease who don't have diabetes. Trials are ongoing right now in 2025.
Fascinating. Okay, what about the brain? You mentioned receptors there earlier. Cognitive health.
Right. Those receptors are in areas like the hippocampus key for memory. So yeah, research is looking at neuroprotection.
Like for Alzheimer's.
Potentially. An animal study in 2024 showed GLP-1 drugs reduced those amyloid plaques, the bad stuff in Alzheimer's, by about 30%.
30% reduction.
Mm-hmm.
In animals, but still promising.
Very promising. Early days, but it suggests a possible new path.
And what about people already taking these drugs? Do they notice any cognitive changes?
Well, one study in 2023 found people with type 2 diabetes on GLP-1 drugs actually performed about 15% better on memory and executive function tests.
15% better. Why would that be?
The theory is it's linked to less brain inflammation and better glucose use in the brain. Again, early days. But there are even trials looking at GLP-1 for Parkinson's, even depression.
The reach just keeps expanding. Okay, what about the gut itself? We know GLP-1 starts there, but does it do anything else for gut health?
Yes, it seems to positively influence the gut microbiome, the bacteria living there, and also systemic inflammation.
So,
A 2024 study found these drugs increased beneficial bacteria, like Akkermansia mucinifera, by about 20%. That bug is linked to a healthier gut lining, less inflammation there.
okay, a healthier gut environment.
And it's not just local. Another study showed they lower body-wide inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha by maybe 15%.
Less inflammation overall.
Exactly. And that might tie into other benefits we see, like reduced liver fat and fatty liver disease, maybe even helping with some autoimmune issues.
It's like this beneficial ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this really does sound like the future of metabolic health. We know about the current drugs, the injectables like semaglutide. Where are things heading next?
Well, the current injectables, liraglutide, dulaglutide, semaglutide, they've been hugely successful. Once-weekly shots, often resistant to that DPP-4 enzyme.
Right.
Global sales were massive, like $22 billion in 2024. They clearly work incredibly well for type 2 diabetes and obesity, better than older options.
And patients seem happy.
Generally, yes, high satisfaction. Better control, weight loss, often fewer side effects than, say, insulin. Though some people do get nausea or diarrhea initially, maybe 10–15%, but it usually passes.
Okay, so what's next? Just more of the same?
Oh no, lots of innovation happening. Big one is oral versions. We have oral semaglutide, Rybelsus already.
Right.
But they're working on next-gen pills. Better absorption, more potent. A recent trial showed a new oral one getting pretty close, like 80% of the injectable's effectiveness.
An effective pill would be huge for access.
Absolutely. Remove that injection barrier.
What else is cooking?
Combination therapies. This is really exciting. Tirzepatide, you might know it as Mounjaro.
Heard of it.
It hits both GLP-1 and another incretin receptor, GIP, a dual agonist, and the weight loss. Even higher, like 20–25% in some studies.
Wow, even more effective.
And they're not stopping there. Now they're looking at triple agonists hitting GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon receptors. Early signs suggest even bigger metabolic benefits could be possible.
Triple agonists. Sounds powerful.
Eh.
And what about using them for those other conditions, like heart disease or Alzheimer's?
Yep, that research is definitely pushing forward. That Alzheimer's trial with semaglutide is a big one, funded by the NIH. And we saw that pilot study showing reduced liver fat in NAFLD.
So, expanding the uses.
Exactly, exploring the full potential across many different conditions.
Feels like we might get much more personalized treatments down the line.
I think so. Genetics is playing a role too. A 2024 study actually found genetic markers that predict who responds best to these drugs.
Really?
Yeah, some people with certain genes lost up to 30% more weight than others on the same drug. So imagine tailoring the treatment based on your genes for maximum effect.
That's the dream of personalized medicine right there. And it's just amazing that this all stems from a hormone our own bodies make. It feels like these drugs work with our biology.
That's a great way to put it. They amplify the body's own signals. But we have to mention the challenges.
Right.
Yeah, the cost is a huge barrier. Semaglutide running over $1,300 a month without insurance. That creates major access problems. That needs addressing.
Definitely a critical issue. Okay, so we focus a lot on GLP-1 itself, but it doesn't work in a vacuum, does it? How does it fit into the bigger metabolic picture?
Not at all. It's one very important piece of a super complex puzzle. It's constantly interacting with insulin, glucagon, GIP, leptin, this whole network of hormones keeping things balanced.
A whole orchestra.
Exactly. And we're also learning just how much the gut microbiome influences all this.
Our gut bacteria.
A 2024 study showed how they can affect GLP-1 secretion. High-fiber diets, for instance, seem to boost the activity of the gut cells making GLP-1, increasing levels by maybe 20%.
So diet still matters, feeds into this system.
Absolutely. It highlights why we need a holistic view. Diet, lifestyle, medication, all working together.
And it feels like learning about GLP-1 really drives home just how incredibly complex our metabolism is. It kind of moves the conversation about obesity and diabetes away from just eat less, try harder.
Precisely. It shifts the narrative towards understanding these intricate hormonal neurological pathways. It's not just about willpower, it's about biology.
Which hopefully leads to better, more compassionate approaches.
That's the goal.
Well, this has been incredibly illuminating, a real deep dive. GLP-1 is clearly so much more than just one thing. It feels like a genuine beacon of hope for metabolic health.
I think that's fair to say. The impact on blood sugar, appetite, insulin sensitivity, it's already transformed lives. And the potential we're seeing for heart health, brain health, inflammation, it's a hugely exciting area of science for our overall well-being.
And it really highlights that complexity, doesn't it? Reminds us there are no simple fixes, and health solutions need to be holistic, probably personalized.
Which leaves us with a thought for you listening. If one natural hormone like GLP-1 can have such profound, widespread effects, what other internal mechanisms might be waiting to be understood? What untapped potential lies within our own biology for improving health in ways we haven't even considered yet?
Something to think about. The incredible interconnectedness of it all.